The distant world of Vera 9 glimmered like a jewel in the endless dark of space. Its skies were streaked with violet clouds, and jagged mountains rose like silent guardians over the valleys below. On this frontier world, humans had recently arrived as part of a fragile alliance with the Arlenthian Empire, an advanced alien civilization whose influence spanned several galaxies. Among the Arlenthians, the royal bloodline was known for beauty, cunning, and an unyielding code of honor, and none carried that reputation more strongly than Princess Liari, a figure both revered and feared. The human officer, Captain Elias Warren, had been assigned as her escort. He was not a hero by rank or by wealth, only a man whose courage and discipline were respected among his peers. Unlike some of the higher-ranking officials who bowed at every gesture of the Arlenthian court, Elias remained calm, observant, and most importantly, careful. He understood the delicate balance required when humans interacted with alien nobility, especially with someone as proud and unpredictable as Princess Liari. Their first meeting was set in the outpost's observation hall. Tall, translucent walls allowed the stars to shine in like distant fires. The princess arrived with a small contingent of guards, her steps measured, her expression one of imperious attention. Elias approached, his own posture straight and composed, careful to maintain the boundaries demanded by alien etiquette. The moment their eyes met, there was a spark of tension in the room, unspoken but undeniable. Liari's gaze swept over him, sharp and precise, as if measuring not only his height and weight but the weight of his character. "Human," she said, her voice smooth but firm, "I will observe your kind closely. Do not give me reason to regret this." Elias inclined his head respectfully. "I understand, Your Highness. I will ensure your time here is safe and informative." The princess studied him, her sharp features unyielding. "Words are easy. Actions define you. Let us see if yours are worthy." Their interaction was interrupted by a sudden alarm. Red lights flashed through the hall, and the deep hum of the outpost's security systems filled the air. Enemy drones had breached the perimeter, something that was supposed to be impossible. Chaos erupted. Guards shouted orders, and humans and aliens alike scrambled to their stations. In the confusion, a maintenance catwalk above the observation hall began to collapse. Liari, moving with instinct, stepped backward to avoid falling debris. Elias reacted without thought. He lunged forward, his hands gripping her waist to steady her. The contact was brief but enough. Liari froze, her eyes wide, and a silence fell over the hall. The guards had stopped moving. Some of the humans looked confused. The Arlenthians, however, were furious. The princess's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Touch me one more time, human, and you'll feel the consequences." Her tone was low, but every word carried the weight of deadly intent. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Elias did not flinch. He knew the law was absolute. To the Arlenthians, any unauthorized physical contact with royalty could demand execution. Yet he also understood something that others didn't. The princess was not merely angry, she was testing him, assessing whether humans operated under fear or principle. "I did not touch you to dishonor," Elias replied evenly. "I touched you to protect you. That was my choice, not a challenge to your authority." Liari's eyes narrowed. "You speak with the courage of fools, or perhaps with the arrogance of those who do not fear death." Both sides waited. The princess's guards were tensely ready, their hands on weapons that could kill instantly. The human soldiers shifted uneasily, unsure if Elias had just sentenced himself. But Liari did something unexpected. Instead of ordering punishment, she stepped back. "Your courage is noted. You will live for now. But understand this, human. The next time you act without my permission, the consequences will be severe." Elias inclined his head. "Understood." The warning hung in the air as the alarms continued to blare. Drones filled the skies outside, their engines whining like insects in a storm. The humans and Arlenthians scrambled to mount a defense, barricading access points and activating energy shields. Liari, despite her outrage, moved with agility, assisting in the coordination of her own troops. Elias observed her closely. He could see her calculating, every move precise. She was not reckless, but she valued control above all. And yet, despite her warnings, he could see a flicker of curiosity in her eyes, a silent question. Why did this human not shrink in fear? The battle intensified. Drones began to penetrate outer defenses, forcing the humans and Arlenthians into a shared struggle. Elias fought with his squad, moving seamlessly alongside soldiers whose lives depended on split-second decisions. Each action, each maneuver, demonstrated not only his skill but his instinct to protect others. Liari, meanwhile, remained a commanding presence. From her position, she directed Arlenthian troops with authority, her voice cutting through chaos. But her attention occasionally flicked toward Elias. She watched him save a young technician from a falling panel, pull a soldier from a collapsing corridor, and coordinate human forces with efficiency that rivaled the Empire's elite. Hours passed like minutes. By the time the dust began to settle, parts of the outpost lay in ruins, scorched by energy blasts and raked with debris. Yet remarkably, casualties were low. The humans had fought with courage, improvising in ways the aliens did not expect. And the princess had survived, thanks largely to the interventions of the human officer she had threatened. As the last drone fell from the sky, a sudden silence blanketed the battlefield. The survivors emerged from cover, wary but relieved. Elias approached Liari cautiously, mindful of the law and her earlier warning. She had taken cover behind a reinforced wall, her armor scratched, her expression unreadable. "You acted again," she said, her voice low, dangerous. "After my warning." "I acted to save your life," Elias replied, steady. "I could not have done otherwise. I am not here to disrespect you, only to prevent death." Liari stared at him for a long moment. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, softened slightly, not in warmth but in acknowledgement. "You are bold, perhaps recklessly so. Humans, your kind, does not fear in the same way we do. You act from principle, not intimidation. It is unusual." Elias said nothing. Words could not convey the mixture of relief, respect, and tension that charged the air. Around them, both human and Arlenthian soldiers were beginning repairs and assessing damage. For a brief moment, the world seemed to hold still, a fragile pause between conflict and understanding. Then Liari straightened, her expression hardening again. "Do not think this absolves you of responsibility. You have survived my wrath once human. That does not grant you freedom. Understand this. Consequences are not always immediate. Some linger, hidden, waiting for the time when they must be exacted." Elias inclined his head. "I will remember, and I will act according to my duty always." The princess gave a curt nod and turned to address her guards. She moved with poise, but the faintest trace of hesitation lingered, a hint that she was reconsidering humans, at least this one. Perhaps she saw something she had not expected: strength, restraint, courage. Night fell over Vera 9. The outpost flickered with emergency lights and the soft hum of restored systems. Elias walked along the damaged corridors, checking on human troops and assisting wherever he could. He thought about the princess, about the strange mixture of danger and admiration he felt in her presence. Despite her warnings, despite the severity of her laws, he could not help but feel that this encounter marked the beginning of something larger than either of them understood. Far above, Liari returned to her temporary quarters. She stood by the window, looking at the violet sky. Her thoughts were a storm: anger, curiosity, admiration, and the faintest trace of respect. The human officer had defied expectations, and she could not ignore it. Yet the law of her people remained absolute. She would not forget the touch that had broken protocol, and she would not forgive it lightly. But something had changed. In that small, impossible way, the princess recognized that humans were not as fragile as they seemed. Courage could be quiet, measured, and deadly in its own right. She had witnessed it firsthand, and it left her unsettled in a way no diplomacy or protocol ever could. In the quiet aftermath, as repairs continued and exhausted soldiers rested, the princess considered the future. If humans could act with such resolve and selflessness, what might they achieve if given freedom and trust? Could they be allies in the truest sense, or would the next act of courage, or defiance, spark conflict instead? For Elias, the night was heavy with thoughts as well. He knew he had crossed a line, yet he also knew that in moments of crisis, principles outweighed rules. His survival, his actions, and even the threat the princess had delivered were all part of a larger story, a story that had only just begun. And somewhere in the silent corridors of the outpost, the unspoken question hung in the air. Would courage be rewarded, or would the consequences of breaking royal law finally arrive? The night stretched on, deep and quiet, with the violet clouds above casting a soft glow over the damaged world. On this frontier, humans and aliens alike would soon learn that bravery, restraint, and understanding were more powerful than laws or threats. And somewhere in the heart of the princess, the faintest recognition of that truth began to take root. The following morning, the outpost was quiet but tense. Smoke still rose from the wreckage of the battle, and emergency crews moved among the ruins, assessing damage and attending to the wounded. Despite the calm exterior, the air was thick with anticipation. Everyone knew that the princess's judgment, though delayed, would come soon. Captain Elias Warren walked through the corridors, checking on human soldiers and helping wherever he could. He had expected scolding, perhaps even punishment, but none had come. The princess's warning from the previous day lingered in his mind like a shadow. One wrong move, one misstep, and the consequences could be fatal. He entered the medical bay to check on some of the injured Arlenthian troops. He had learned quickly that humans and aliens could work together when survival demanded it, even if cultural barriers made trust difficult. As he bandaged a young Arlenthian soldier's arm, the princess's voice echoed in the hall behind him. "Captain Warren," she said, her tone sharp but measured. Elias turned. Princess Liari stood at the doorway, flanked by her guards. Her armor was still scratched from the battle, but she carried herself with the same unyielding pride. "Yes, Your Highness," he replied, standing straight. "You will accompany me today," she said. "I will show you more of our people, and you will see that not all consequences are immediate." Elias inclined his head. "Understood." They left the medical bay together, moving through corridors still strewn with debris. Soldiers and technicians parted for them, whispers following their path. No one dared speak aloud. The tension between humans and Arlenthians was palpable. Outside, the air was crisp, and the violet sky stretched endlessly above. Liari led him to a reinforced landing platform where her personal shuttle waited. The ship was sleek, silver, and humming with latent energy. The princess climbed aboard first, her movements precise and commanding. Elias followed, careful to maintain the distance protocol dictated by her people. The shuttle rose above the mountains and valleys of Vera 9, moving toward a vast training ground where the Arlenthian warriors honed their skills. The landscape below was a mix of jagged rocks and deep chasms, with streams of luminescent water cutting through the valleys like veins. "Observe closely," Liari said, her gaze fixed on the activity below. "These are the finest warriors of our empire. Discipline, strength, and strategy guide every move. One mistake can mean death." Elias watched the warriors in formation, their movements precise and deadly. Unlike human drills, these exercises were designed not only for combat efficiency but for perfect coordination and unity. Every action had a purpose, every gesture a consequence. Suddenly, an alarm blared. A simulation drone had gone rogue, attacking both trainees and instructors. Chaos erupted instantly. Despite the controlled environment, the threat felt real. Soldiers scrambled, shields activated, and energy weapons fired. Liari's eyes sharpened. "Do not interfere, human. Observe only." Elias clenched his fists. He wanted to help, to act, but he restrained himself. He remembered her warning, the words that still rang in his mind. Consequences. But even as he obeyed, he noticed something unusual. While the Arlenthian warriors moved with skill, there was hesitation in their actions. The human soldiers in the simulation exercises had no hesitation, improvising to protect one another. The princess noticed Elias' attention. "You watch them closely. You see weakness where others see perfection. You observe their hesitation." "They act by protocol, not instinct," Elias replied. "Humans act for survival and protection. We trust each other, even in the chaos." Liari's lips pressed into a thin line. "You speak as if instinct equals superiority. Yet instinct alone cannot guide a warrior against the might of the galaxy. Still, you intrigue me, human. You see beyond what is expected." The simulation ended, the rogue drone neutralized by instructors. Liari's gaze remained on Elias as the warriors bowed in deference. "You will accompany me on a real mission," she said finally. "An unplanned test, if you will. You may see your principles challenged further." Elias felt a mix of anticipation and unease. He knew that any real mission with the princess could be dangerous, not only because of external threats but because every action could provoke her wrath. Still, he nodded. "I am ready, Your Highness." Within the hour, a distress signal reached the outpost. A supply convoy had been ambushed by local marauders near the northern cliffs, a treacherous region filled with jagged terrain and deep chasms. Liari decided to investigate personally. Elias was assigned to accompany her, serving as both guide and protector. The journey was tense. The shuttle cut through the violet sky, the engines humming steadily. Liari remained silent for most of the flight, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Elias respected her space, knowing that words now could provoke unintended consequences. They arrived at the ambush site to find human and Arlenthian survivors huddled among rocks, some injured, others terrified. Marauder ships hovered above, firing sporadic energy bolts. The humans and aliens on the ground struggled to form a defensive line. Without hesitation, Elias leapt into action, coordinating with both human and Arlenthian soldiers. Liari observed, her eyes narrowing with each decision he made. He moved with precision, pulling wounded soldiers out of the line of fire, blocking attacks and directing reinforcements. A sudden blast knocked Liari off balance. Instinctively, Elias reached for her. Time slowed. He remembered her warning from before. He knew the law demanded caution, yet he could not let her fall. He grabbed her, shielding her body as another blast tore through the rocks beside them. Liari's eyes blazed with fury and disbelief. "Captain Warren," she shouted, her voice sharp, her body tense. "Do you not fear the consequences?" "I fear nothing more than letting you fall," Elias replied, steadying her. "Your safety comes before all else." Around them, soldiers rallied. Seeing Elias act with fearless determination inspired both humans and Arlenthians. Marauders hesitated, unsure how to respond to such boldness. Even Liari's guards seemed momentarily stunned, witnessing a human risk everything for a princess who had warned him once already. The battle raged for hours. Elias continued to move through the chaos, saving lives, covering retreats, and coordinating attacks. Liari's initial anger simmered into something else: respect, grudging admiration, and a recognition that humans possessed a courage that the Arlenthians often overlooked. Finally, the marauders retreated, their ships fleeing into the violet sky. The survivors cheered, though the victory came at a cost. Several soldiers were injured, and the landscape bore scars from the relentless conflict. Elias helped the wounded, checking for signs of serious injury. Liari approached him, her face unreadable. "You defied my warning again," she said quietly, her voice low but intense. "You touched me, risking your life and my anger, yet you survived. Why?" Elias met her gaze evenly. "Because principles matter more than fear. Courage and responsibility guide my actions, not threats. If I acted differently, lives would be lost, including yours." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Liari's eyes softened slightly, though her posture remained regal. "You are unlike any human I have encountered, perhaps unlike any being I have encountered." She stepped closer, a deliberate distance maintained, her presence commanding but not aggressive. "I warned you, human. The consequences I spoke of were real, yet you faced them willingly. That takes a strength I cannot ignore." Elias bowed his head slightly. "I did not act for reward or recognition, only because it was right." Liari's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Then consider this. Your actions have changed how I see humans. You are no longer fragile allies to be monitored and corrected. You are worthy of respect. But understand this, one wrong move in the future could still carry consequences." "I understand," Elias said calmly. The princess gestured for the survivors to gather. She addressed both humans and Arlenthians publicly, recounting the bravery displayed during the ambush. Her praise was not just for human soldiers, but for Elias in particular. She acknowledged his courage, his willingness to act despite rules and threats, and his understanding of responsibility. The crowd listened in silence, the tension easing as they realized that a human had not only survived but earned recognition from the feared princess herself. Whispers spread through both sides. Humans could be more than allies, they could be equals in courage and honor. Later, when the crowd dispersed, Liari approached Elias privately. "You could have died today," she said softly. "And yet, you chose action over caution. That choice, it speaks louder than any law or tradition." "I acted for life, not law," Elias replied. The princess studied him for a long moment, her eyes reflecting the violet glow of the sky. "Perhaps the galaxy needs more like you," she said quietly. "Perhaps humanity is not what I expected, and perhaps consequences are not always what they seem." Elias allowed himself a small nod, sensing that her respect, though quietly given, was real. The tension between law and principle, between caution and courage, had been tested, and the outcome had redefined both their views. As night fell over Vera 9, the sky stretching in endless violet and gold, the outpost stood silent but resolute. The battle was over, yet a new understanding had begun. Humans and Arlenthians alike had witnessed courage, restraint, and honor displayed in ways that no law could dictate. And somewhere in the heart of the princess, the lesson was clear. Strength was not only measured by power or command, but by the willingness to act when it mattered most, to face consequences without fear, and to protect life above all else. Captain Elias Warren had done just that.